President of the Europe of Freedom and Democracy.
When we had a president, we'd see a giant global political figure, the man that would be the political leader for 500 million people, the man that would represent all of us on the world stage, the man whose job was so important that, of course, you're paid more than President Obama. Well, I'm afraid what we got was you. And I'm sorry, but after that performance earlier that you gave, and I don't want to be rude, but you know, really, you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense, though, that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.
Well, Commissioner, you picked the right man. Puppet Papademos is in place, and as Athens caught fire on Sunday night, he rather took my breath away. He said, violence and destruction have no place in a democratic country. What democratic country? He's not even a democratically elected Prime Minister. He's been appointed by you guys. And Greece isn't run through democracy now, it's run through a troika. 3 foreign officials that fly into Athens airport and tell the Greeks what they can and can't do. The violence and destruction that you saw on Sunday is being caused directly because people are having their democratic rights taken from them. What else can they do? And I must say, if I was a Greek citizen, I would have been out there joining those protests on Sunday. I'd be out there trying to bring down this monstrosity that has been put upon those people. And in his efforts, in the puppet's efforts to get the MPs to vote for the bailout package, he warned them that if they didn't do so, there would be a dramatic decline in living standards. Well, as he looked outside the front door, has he seen the fact that 50% of the young people are unemployed already? Has he seen the fact that the economy, far from stalling, has contracted for 5 years in a row and is now accelerating on a downward death spiral, a contraction of 7% per annum? Greece is being driven into the ground, and I think, frankly, when it comes to chaos, you ain't seen nothing yet. These policies are driving Greece towards a revolution. They need to be set free. If they don't get the drachma back, you will be responsible for something truly, truly horrible.
Well, congratulations, everybody. David Cameron had you worried for a bit. You thought he was even a Eurosceptic, but it's okay. You've had a quiet word with him, and the real David Cameron was back. Whatever happened to the veto? No more vetoes anymore. Indeed, Mr Cameron is now actively supporting this quite despicable pact, this plan to destroy and humiliate nation states that do not live up to a Germanic view of how economies ought to be run. Now, I must say, I thought the weekend's proposals from the German finance ministry that came out, suggesting that a European commissioner and his staff occupy a big building in Athens and take over the running of the country, a Gauleiter, some may say, I thought it must be a joke. I thought it can't, I mean, possibly even this EU could not sink to those depths. But of course it was just a negotiating position. And what we've now got for Greece is diplomacy at gunpoint. It's the kind of strategy that Palmerston used against Athens back in the 19th century. Nobody can deny today that Greece is any more than a colony. And this is all a terrible, huge mistake. Greece is not a failing subsidiary company where head office needs to come in and take control. Greece is a nation with a soul, a nation with pride, with history. Goodness me, they invented democracy in the first place. They are suffering. They have youth unemployment of 50%, caused, Mr Van Rompuy, because they're in the euro. You are causing the misery in these countries, and you blather on about creating jobs and growth. None of this is actually going to happen. And remember, these people are being driven into humiliation and desperation, and desperate people do desperate things, and I am deeply fearful for what will happen in Greece if we continue with this mad course, and of course, as Mr Barroso knows, it's going to be Portugal next. Well, good morning, Mr Schulz. President Schulz, I know it's my job to congratulate you, but given that we knew this result 2.5 years ago as a result of a stitch-up, there really doesn't seem to be much point. I mean, after all, nobody in Europe would ever, modern-day Europe, would ever have a big, powerful job that was decided by a full, open process. I'm sure Mr Barroso would agree. I was musing this morning. I was thinking, what kind of President Schulz are we going to get? Are we going to get a dignified, calm, a figure that behaves like the Speaker of all great parliaments around the world, somebody who puts himself above politics and the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day arguments and is an ambassador, indeed a statesman? Or are we going to get the Martin Schulz we've got to know since 2004 as leader of the Socialist Group? You know the one I mean, snarling, angry, unable to control his temper, intolerant of anybody with an alternative point of view, somebody who is contemptuous when in free referendums people have the temerity to vote no, somebody who is anti-British to his fingertips and doesn't like free markets. I was wondering which one would we get. Well, your opening speech has settled that question for me, and it's pretty clear. We're going to have 2.5 years of political fanaticism from the chair. And I have to say, only a third world country, only a banana republic would want to have an overtly political president of a parliament. But it's what we've got. I may represent the smallest group in this parliament, Mr Schulz, but I can tell you that it's a group whose ideas and whose views are now being echoed by a growing number of citizens right across this continent. I'm sure you'd agree. The opinion polls show it's kind of 50-50 whether people think this EU is a good thing or a bad thing. What we represent, sir, is not anti-Europeanism. That is not what it's about. We believe in nation-state democracy. We want a Europe of trade. We want a Europe of cooperation. We want a Europe that is responsible. We don't want a Europe that seeks to be a global superpower. We don't want a Europe run by Mr Barroso and the Commission and the so-called community method. And I will do my very best to provide political opposition to your presidency over the course of the next 2.5 years, and I hope you give us a fair hearing. Thank you. Chairman, thank you. I've often asked myself the question, why would a successful country that's enjoyed 1,000 years of independence give up its right of self-government to the unelected non-entities that we see sitting before us this morning? And the answer that comes back from the Foreign Office and the great of the good is that we must have influence in Europe. We must have a seat at the top table and we can change things. And we've done our best to prove what good Europeans we are. We go on paying you £50 million a day. We've helped the Euro bailout fund, even though we didn't join the currency, thank goodness. We've given you 80% of the fish stocks that swim in our waters. Your fleets can come and take that from us. And we've applied every directive you've given us absolutely to the letter, all of it to gain influence. In fact, Nick Clegg is so deluded he still thinks we can take the lead in Europe. When a British Prime Minister goes to a summit with a very modest proposal to protect a uniquely important British industry, a snarling President Sarkozy tells him where to go, with German approval of course, and we find ourselves without a friend in the room, some influence. Well, you've decided to head off on the Titanic towards economic and democratic disaster, and we're now in a lifeboat outside the Titanic, but we're threatened by a bow wave that is going to come
and engulf us if we're not careful, and it's retribution, and we've heard the language of retribution this morning. Financial markets legislation is going to be imposed upon Britain, and we will have no influence whatsoever over any of it. Something changed, though, on Friday. Mr Cameron may not know it, but we are now on course. Britain is going to make the great escape. We are going to get out of this union. We will be the first European country to get our freedom back. I suspect many others will follow. And then what we will have is our democracy back, our liberty back, and we will have influence in the world as you lot head for disaster. It is going to happen.
Mr Barroso, you